more importantly than all of that, because that happens 98 in May of 90. What I'm saying about is Colusi's white paper that he said that he sent to the chief of detectives, the deputy commissioner, and the commissioner. And those three bosses looked at that white paper and didn't do anything about it, didn't call up Bonner on the phone and say, what the hell is going on here? You got 4 rapes in this area, Center City, that the mayor is trying to build up because he saved the city. We all know, from South Street to Spring Garden, river to river, right? Okay? And nobody did anything about it? I find that hard to believe. Nobody made a phone call to sex crimes and said, get me Bonner on the phone. What the hell's going on? Colusi, what's going on here? You wrote this white paper. What do you mean there's 4 jobs left? And Pine Street, with all the real estate developers, the students, the medical students, all these young girls living alone downtown and everything else, and no boss said, wow, maybe we should look at that. Maybe we should alert somebody. Maybe we should alert the captains of the 6th and the 9th. It's total bullshit.
Welcome back to another episode of Cold Red. I'm Ray Carr, and with me always is Fitz. Fitz, how are you?
I'm fine, Ray. How are you?
Good. This season here at Cold Red, we've been dedicating the entire season to a case that both Fitz and I had the opportunity to work when we were at the FBI. It was titled the Center City Rapist case, and we've had very interesting people that have been directly involved and even involved more so after it was all over. Today, Fitz and I would like to welcome back retired Philadelphia homicide detective Chuck Boyle and Sylvester Schieber, the father of Shannon Schieber, to the Center City Rapist case. We would also like to welcome back Lieutenant Thomas McDevitt from the Philadelphia Spectral Victims Unit. He's going to provide some additional insight into the Center City Rapist investigation and what it looked like from inside the sex crimes unit that they were investigating at the time. Tom, welcome back to the show. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Now, when we ended up the last show, Chuck, you were talking about something about this white paper, and you wanted to ask Tom a question, and you wanted to talk about that a little bit. And I know you talked about it a little bit before we came on the air. Why don't you go ahead and fill us in a little bit, Chuck?
All right. So the August 27th white paper that Lieutenant Colusi states that he sent downtown. And when a white paper is distributed, it goes to all the bosses up top get like these white papers. So, and you always send down a cover letter to detective headquarters, and then they make all the copies. This one contained 4 cases that already had white papers done. They had to have them because one case happened in June, one happened in July, and 2 happened in August. And my question to Tommy was, at that time, Lieutenant Boyle would send white papers down. They would be sent down usually within a day of that case. Am I right, Tom? And with a cover sheet. Yeah, right?
Usually they were sent the same day. If not, like you said, if it's a weekend, it wouldn't go on Monday.
Yeah,
but the way it was in Special Victims was we did the white paper, gave it to the captain, and then the captain's office would distribute it.
Well, we did the same thing at homicide. Right, and then it would go up through it. And so my question to you is, so Lieutenant Colusi sends a white paper August the 27th. We can't find a cover sheet on it, right? It has a timestamp thing on the next page, but it says pages 2. One is Colusi's he says his white paper. The second page is a white paper that Lieutenant Joe Wright sent down, right? And then there's a receipt. And then he says that the cover sheet was from the desk of Captain Eileen Bond. Now, that doesn't make any sense at all. Page 2 pages. If you send down a white paper with a cover sheet, it's the cover sheet and the white paper would be 2 pages. Am I right? That's how it counts it. And then down at the bottom, it prints that date, time, and everything else down at the bottom. It's timestamped. So you would have that. And then you would attach it to the white so that they could never come back to you and say, you didn't send that white paper down. So the other thing that's important is, and I'm going to ask you, do you know about a police officer named Tyrone Winkler?
I don't recognize the name at all right now.
Tyrone Winkler, on September the 9th of 1997, Troy Graves for an investigation of a peeping Tom that was called in by a complaint. I never knew that either.
I remember reading that after we went back and did checks on when he was stopped. I remember that. And he was stopped by a Philadelphia cop, I think, and a University of Penn police officer as well.
That was later.
Penn stop was
my
after.
question to you is, so if like what you and Mike Boyle wanted to do, that there's a pattern there, and I agree with you, you would be one, because I know, to let the public be aware of this, just like, and the captain of the district. So you basically had officers out on the street that had no idea that there was a serial rapist running around Pine Street. And Winkler stops a guy. And I guarantee you that if Winkler knew that there was someone committing sexual assaults, rapes in that area there, and he stops a person like Troy Graves, he's at least going to take him in essential detectives for investigation of a peeping Tom. I think he would have 100%.
Well, I agree with you there. But what we did learn from this case is that after about a month, if cops or the public don't hear about stuff, in their mind, that person's caught.
Yeah,
they're not looking for him anymore. I mean, you learn people like, we would go out when we had the park rapist. We would go out every year.
Yeah.
And people were like, "Oh, he wasn't caught. I thought he was caught. I didn't hear nothing about it." Right. So you kind of learned that you got to keep putting it out there. You got to keep putting it out there because people forget.
Yeah, but what I'm saying in this case was September the 9th, middle of August. I mean, and the mere fact that you and Mike Boyle thought that there's I bet you more than you two. I bet there was a lot of people in sex crimes at that time that thought, there's somebody out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, good investigators did probably.
And you have two people that say, one in particular that says, nope, there's no pattern here. There's no pattern here. So the officers don't know. The public doesn't know. The bosses up top don't know. Detectives don't know. Nobody knows about what's going on.
Can I add one more person here? Two nights before Shannon was attacked, she was walking home from a movie, and this guy started following her. And she walked round and round Rittenhouse Square 3 times. Two apartment doormen came out, and they watched what was going on. If Shannon had known that there was a serial rapist working her community, she would have reacted very differently than she did. And I'll bet you a week's pay that those 2 doormen would have reacted somewhat differently also. She didn't have a chance. She was set up for murder.
100%.
Let me throw one thing out, and Chuck, to both you and Tommy. Tommy, when you and Lieutenant Boyle went into SIU to talk to Bonner and Calusi, about what part of the year? Was it September of 97? Was it right after that second rape in August? When was it that you went up there, if you remember?
It was after the 2 that happened right next to each other. So it was 97. I guess it was June of
August,
97.
September?
August of 97.
Those 2 were in
97. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of ironic. It's kind of ironic that Calusi's white paper is August 27th of 97. So I wonder, and you look at Mike Boyle, he's the guy doing the white paper. I'm sure before you went in to talk to them that Mike did white paper on your assumptions of tying these 4 cases together. Is that right?
No.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, yep. And I mean, when you look at the white paper that Chuck sent me, I'm telling you, it says black male. We didn't know he was a black male till he was caught, even though I argued with people that he was a black male, but they wouldn't change it. If you've seen the descriptions, it was dark-skinned white male or Middle Eastern male. They would not go black male. So why is he writing black male on there? Unless he's thinking of the 2 Fairmount cases, but 2 totally different descriptions.
That's my point, Chuck. 1 second, Chuck. That's my point. Chuck, did you ever see Mike Boyle's white paper?
No,
because probably never got sent anywhere.
They would have been individual white papers, just like homicide. Like we would send, each one would have been sent like June, July, the day after the 2. Like Linda Pace was a good detective, and who she worked for. They would have gone, and the bosses, the lieutenants, and would have put a white paper together and sent it down with a cover sheet.
We did not get white
Mike
paper.
Boyle and Lieutenant Boyle and Lieutenant McDevitt, when they went in to argue, I'll guarantee you this, when they went in to argue, there was no Calusi white paper that linked these 4 jobs, because he's in there denying that these 4 jobs are connected. That's the whole thing. It doesn't matter whether it was in August, September, October, right? it doesn't matter. It only matters now when it becomes January of 99 and then October of 99, when lo and behold, Lieutenant Caluzzi knows all these jobs are connected, states in his deposition that he put together that pattern board, and that pattern board was used in 1997 when Tom McDevitt just stated he put that pattern board together.
But there were no individual white papers written on Abby and Bell's cases.
They might have been, but
if they had been written, we would have gotten them, because that would have shown that they were investigating the cases.
Exactly. No, there was no white paper sent on those, but there were 2 white papers that would have been sent down on
Cora and Diane.
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah. And I've got them.
Okay.
Yeah, but still, there's a possibility that those white papers may have been written. And what happened, because I'm so against that there's a pattern, I crumple that up and I put it in a trash can, and it never sees the light of day.
No, but they were never written because they weren't.
No, I'm talking about Mike's. I'm talking about Mike's white paper.
But Mike wouldn't have written a white paper for an investigation of persons or a burglary. If there was a white paper done, it would have been a white paper done by Central Detectives sent down on a burglary.
And that would have had to have been McGinnis.
And that wasn't done.
I could tell you Mike would have put one together to present our point and argue our point.
Mm-hmm.
And, like you said, it goes into them. They say no, and when they say no, and he had a lot of influence at the time with the captain, and like you said, it may have went in the trash can. I can't tell you.
I will not argue that Mike might not have written a paper, but I know we didn't get a paper, and I know if there was one that existed, they would have given it to us.
Well, I think if one existed, I think Chuck and Jeff would have got it too. And so would the commanding officer of the 9th District. So he could put it out to
more importantly than all of that, because that happens 98 in May of 90. What I'm saying about is Caluzzi's white paper that he said that he sent to the chief of detectives, the deputy commissioner, and the commissioner. And those 3 bosses looked at that white paper and didn't do anything about it, didn't call up Bonner on the phone and say, what the hell is going on here? You got 4 rapes in this area, Center City, that the mayor is trying to build up because he saved the city. We all know, from South Street to Spring Garden, river to river, right? Okay. And nobody did anything about it. I find that hard to believe. I felt like nobody made a phone call to sex crimes and said, get me Bonner on the phone. What the hell's going on? Caluzzi, what's going on here? You wrote this white paper. What do you mean there's 4 jobs linked? And Pine Street, with all the real estate developers, the students, the medical students, all these young girls living alone downtown and everything else, and no boss said, wow, maybe we should look at that. Maybe we should alert somebody. Maybe we should alert the captains of the 6th and the 9th. It's total bullshit. There's no other explanation for that white paper existed August 27th of 1997. No way that anybody missed that.
And Chuck, for everything you just mentioned, that's the reason why someone who has Caluzzi's name on it in late 1999 decided to put that white paper together to make it look like it was sent over 2 years prior to that.
Absolutely. It has to be.
That's where this whole thing comes from. I'm also a forensic linguist. I'm not going to get into the weeds with this, but it would be very interesting to look at that document from 1999 and see how it compares to documents that were sent in 1997. Fonts, things like that.
It's much more than the linguistics. The cosmetics of that document are totally different
We
than
didn't
any
have
other
that
white
paper
paper
at the
we've
time in
seen.
the police department. 1997. We're lucky. In homicide, we were still using a word processor
And dot matrix printers.
Yeah. So
That's my point. This could be proven through evidence, forensic evidence, most likely, that it was not generated in August of 97.
If you're interested, I can send you a detailed memo on that.
I am interested.
Absolutely. Send it
Of course,
to
we'd
Fitz.
like the original of each, but I'm not sure who would have access to the original of those documents all these years later.
when Tommy took over SIU, right, and he was he met with Chief Inspector Maxwell at a Christmas party and asked in on the job. Am I right, Tom?
Yeah.
You guys asked in on a job. So they put Tommy, Carl Latour.
In the beginning, it was Crystal before she went to homicide. Then Linda.
Before she went to homicide, Jimmy Griffin. And they brought all these, the ones to help out. And we even went up, and Tommy will remember this, we went up to New York and spoke with Diane to get the composite. The composite that, remember, you talked to Elizabeth, you talked to Troy's girlfriend, and that's when the little girl said, oh, Mommy, there's Troy with the poster. Remember when we went up with that big book of all the suspects, the pictures of the black males, and we handed it to her? Yeah. She handed it right back and said, do not show me black males. And that's in 1999. Do not show me black males. But in 1997, there is a white paper that says black male. We always thought it was an Israeli, Middle Eastern, right? And we were piecing this together like you guys after we got the files and stuff with the DNA link. We had to start from scratch. But we had somebody sitting in an office in homicide that knew everything about 4 jobs. Put every girl in Center City in Philadelphia at risk. Caused Shannon Schieber to be murdered. Caused that girl to get raped in 99, and had every girl raped in Fort Collins because he didn't do his damn job. And that's the truth.
And every white paper, Chuck, would have your name at the bottom. I don't see Absolutely. His name on there at all.
It isn't, because it never existed.
So, Tommy, when you get in and you get into SIU and you take over after Carluzzi leaves, what's the atmosphere like there? Tell us what happened. And you went, you met with Maxwell, and you said, hey, we know what's going on. Now you have the power. Before you didn't. Now you do. Now you have to go in and say, we need to take a look at these 4 cases. We went in on this. We think it's tied in to Shannon.
I could tell you that we tried to do stuff. We know we had the 2 that were together, trying to figure out, you look like regular cops do. What's the guy doing in that area? He either lives there or works there. There's some reason why he's there. So we're trying to look in that angle. We looked at car stops. We looked at pet stops. But unfortunately, everybody was looking for a white male. I mean, that really does hamper you. I do remember we tried to reach out to the first victim. She didn't want to talk to us.
A black male. We were looking for a black male.
We were looking for a white male.
Okay, you guys.
Yeah, and because we never got the black. I found out because I would talk to the lab all the time.
Understood. We were looking for a black male burglar for 9 months.
But we did have the other civil rapist that was going on was a black male, the one in Fairmount, right. And he got caught. But we even on our second victim, I sent somebody over and offered to have her hypnotized. Maybe she could, tell us more what happened. And she told the investigator that she would rather not know what happened. So, we were trying to do things. And then as the cases started coming in, we started trying to do more things. Eventually, I got a call from a retired cop in Washington, D.C., Seattle, Washington, rather. And he worked with Akron at the time. And he said, look, I'm reading this stuff that you put out. He said, I think I might be able to help. And I kind of asked him what we needed. We needed, this is kind of when he got picked up in we matched Fort Collins to us. He said, look, I can help you out. I said, look, we need to know somebody that lived in Philadelphia at our time and in Fort Collins. That's what we thought. And he said, okay, we can have somebody write a database. And then another information company contacted us, and they offered to do the same thing for us.
But
and eventually they're the ones who helped track them down. I mean, they were...
The fellow you talked to in Washington was probably at the State Department because he called me.
Sorry, say that again?
There was a fellow at the State Department in the intelligence unit at the State Department who told me that he talked to somebody in the Philadelphia Police Department and said, I can help you out. He had worked on identifying the 9/11 attackers.
Okay. This guy was from Seattle, Washington.
Well,
he was a retired cop working for Akron at the time, part-time.
Okay, well, I've got this guy's name. He had a unit in Florida, an outfit in Florida that had been trying to get State Department business.
Florida was the other guy. I forget what his company was called. He had owned LexisNexis at one time, and he started another company in Florida.
So anyway, he says, well, look, I've got this guy that's been pestering me to do work for us, and he's always said, give us a test. I'll call him up and tell him what we're looking for. it was a Friday afternoon. He said he came back on Monday morning with 38 names, and Troy Gray's name was on the list. I can get you his name. I've got it in my.
Eventually, originally it was a real long list, and I was like, what does Fort Collins and Philadelphia have in common? We realized, veterinarian school was one of the only things. But I think originally when it first came back, there was, I don't know, a couple thousand names of people
that was
lived, and then we tried to narrow it down to zip codes, and eventually, we did get Troy Graves' name on there. We had to deal with Colorado. We would investigate anybody that was in the Philadelphia area. They would investigate anybody that was in Colorado. We gave them every tip that we have. We gave them every name that ever came in. We gave them our whole database because we had a database in special victims that we logged every tip and everybody that got stopped and suspects. So
I have a question for you.
You were there when they started combing through the list of cases that had been classified as investigation of person, right? When they went back and did the audit. Did you do any analysis of what units those misclassifications came out of? Were they all coming out of SIU?
No. See, the way it is with SIU, most of the time, SIU got the case afterwards. Most of the time, unless it was a serial rapist, and then SIU would take over immediately. But before that, it was just the line squad cases, and like I said earlier, a lot of that was,
Okay,
I can tell you that after reading some cases at one point, I looked over to Lieutenant Boyle and I said, how did we get this bad? Because I could tell you, I thought we were pretty good at one point. And it became very laxical. People picking up like, I don't believe her, or her story don't make sense, and that would become investigation of persons. It wasn't never for us to try to reduce crime. I could tell you that. And that's, it was, they were under the wrong impression of what they should be doing. And that's how things changed. And we learned from that. Timony came in and he allowed all the women's groups to come in and look at every case. And he said to us, look, wherever the chips fall, they fall. And, we worked with them and we learned stuff from them. And I think they learned some stuff from us. It was a great working relationship that's still going on. We learned that, not to ask why questions. We learned how victims react, and it wasn't the way we thought they would react. We were treating them as suspects, like, you're lying about something. And unfortunately, that's kind of what happened with a lot of the cases. And we went back and rechanged the codes on a lot of cases and actually made, quite a few arrests. And one was actually there was a serial rapist in there as well. So, yeah, I mean, we got bad. There's no doubt about it.
Tom, my question to you is, and I think it needs to be explained. So Bonner's the captain of sex crimes. When did the changes come place? Was under Timony and Maxwell that they got together, and then they brought in Kirshner and Captain Mooney and you guys, and then the whole thing changed, isn't that? And that would have been somewhere in 97, 98.
Yeah,
Am I right?
It was because soon after Timony came, Eileen Bonner got transferred out of our unit. Comstat was going on, and you were expected to know about every stranger sexual assault that came into special victims, and you had to know everything about it. And I guess he didn't like her answer on one of the cases, and she was transferred out. Kirshner became the inspector, and Captain Mooney became the captain, and every case was looked at that came in the door.
And that's when you went to SIU.
Yep.
Took over SIU.
That was December of 98.
I actually went as soon as Lucy got transferred, which was right around when Timony came in. But Bonner was still there, and then she left almost, I don't know, a couple weeks after I was in there.
I don't mean 97. I meant 98. It was 98. Lucy came in the end of May or like June of 98.
No, it's right. It was right at the end of May.
End of May. And then when that's when I guess they had that Comstat thing, because all the captains were walking around having nervous breakdowns. Yep. And then of course, if you didn't have the right answer or an answer, you were marked. And then that's when all the changes came, when it almost became, when you guys got together, become the Philadelphia model after that.
Well, after really, unfortunately, it was after Shannon got murdered. I mean, it was that in a newspaper article, and they wanted answers, and Timony came in and just said, look, let them come in and look at it. He said, wherever the chips fall, they fall. And, me and Mike were pretty much responsible for going back and looking at all the old cases and seeing what we did wrong. And like I said, at some point, I looked over at Mike and I just said, look, how did we get this bad, Mike? We really became lackadaisical.
Yeah, but you guys did
it was it was heartening, to be honest with you. I mean, it was like we did get bad, but luckily, Timothy allowed us to make changes. He kind of like said to us, "It's on you. Do what you got to do." So between Mooney, Kirshner, and other command at Special Victims, we revamped everything. The way we did interviews, the way we handled investigations, the way we coded things, the way we went back and did things.
From sex crimes to Special Victims.
Special Victims moved our headquarters, gave us I used to be the same thing in homicide. We shared the same bathrooms with the complainants, the victims, the perpetrators. Nothing was, victims were sitting and perpetrator be walking by, which wasn't good. So there was a lot of things that got changed. But, it didn't happen until, it's like anything else, nothing changed until something happens.
Tom, let's back up a little bit. We've heard Sill's version and Chuck's, and you mentioned a little bit about Fort Collins today. I'm just curious again for our audience sake, and we're hoping to get a Fort Collins police officer on with us who actually worked the case in the next few weeks. But at some point, you're sitting at a desk, you get a phone call, one of your people walks in, "Hey, what do you know about Fort Collins, Colorado? Can you walk us through and how that first happened?"
I would look. I mean, this case was every day for me. It was every day for me and our people. It was every day. We're looking. He's going to do something. We got to see it. And then after the sixth incident, he just it was almost like he left us that towel as a slap in the face to us, to be honest with you. He left the DNA when he left Philadelphia. He left that DNA on that last one. And it was like, okay, he's going to do it again. He's not going to, but where'd he go? Every day, I had a habit since I was a street cop, read the teletype messages every day. They came over. And I wanted to know what was going on, who was wanted, what was going on, even back then. And I saw this teletype message about Fort Collins. Although the description was off a little bit, and figured, okay, could have gained a little bit of weight. I gave it to Linda. I said, "Linda, do me a favor, contact Fort Collins and find out what they have. They have any DNA."
And Tom, this is 2001?
Yeah. Yeah, it was just before 9/11. It was I think it was in August or so. Linda contacts them. They said, yeah, they have DNA, but they didn't have it entered yet. So we had Lou from the lab, the guy who was running the lab at the time, send the profile to them, and they come back a little while later, said it's a match. And that's how we matched it to Fort Collins. Otherwise, it would have waited till they submitted DNA or got in there, and eventually it would have came, but we got our start. And we were actually ready to go to Fort Collins and talk to them when it happened and all the airports were closed down. And I can't think of his name off the top of my head now. The homicide detective, me and him went the first night that they allowed flights, and we got stuck in Dallas sleeping on the chairs. McKelvey, Paul McKelvey. And we got out to Fort Collins, and we met the investigator out there, Kim, and their team. And we stayed out there a week, and we looked at, went around driving. We read all their reports.
Can I interrupt you just for a second? Did you have Graves' name at this point?
No.
Or you just knew that things were connected by DNA?
We just knew that they were connected.
Right.
Like I said, the descriptions were off a little bit. They're talking about having a pot belly and a bigger belly, but we know the DNA matched. And that's when we started okay, what brings somebody to Fort Collins and Philadelphia, and especially the time frames. I think they had 6 cases out there. His last case, he tried to sexually assault 2 victims at one point, and then he had to run. They agreed to share everything with us, Fort Collins. But as you know, you've seen this in the FBI and all, other places don't like to share anything. Sometimes even in Philadelphia Police Department, cops in one district won't tell cops in another district what's going on. And in Pennsylvania, you got the counties and nobody's sharing nothing, so you don't know what's going on. And, we shared everything with them. We gave them everything that we had. When we actually found out they did a nice job out there. Their crime lab guy got a fingerprint off a railing, which was great. They got DNA. They did have somebody call in a tip on his name a couple of times and said it was him, but they never told us. They never told us about that name. Otherwise, we would have researched that name, but they never shared that with us. And then when they finally got him, when we narrowed down the names, we called them and told them, look, we got this name. And that's when they sent out a team to look for him. And they left a card at his door. So we said they lost him when they were following him. So we called the Air Force base that he was working on. And the Air Force people said, well, pick him up now. He's in here getting his teeth done. We said, no, but can you get the utensils when he's done? Get his utensils first. We want to kind of be sure. And they were gathering up the utensils. And then I'm assuming his ex-wife now talked him into going in to be interviewed. And they got him in there and they interviewed him. They took fingerprints, DNA while he was there. And before he left, they had the fingerprint match. So they did a great job with that out there. But like Chuck has probably told you before, when we went back out there to try to interview him, they weren't the most hospitable people there was. I don't know why. I still don't know why they
had a
treated us the
lawyer.
way they did, and didn't want to share anything. I mean, they just
had
didn't
a
want to share
lawyer
anything.
that was fighting like hell to keep Philadelphia from learning anything because she was afraid he was facing the death penalty in Philadelphia.
No.
And he was.
Yeah, he. For a small police department, they did a nice job. Other than not sharing those, I can't say they didn't. Like I said, their crime scene guy did a phenomenal job. Their lab matched the DNA right away. Kim did a wonderful job. I mean, she was a new investigator at the time. She did a really nice job on it. Unfortunately, hands were tied for the investigation at some point because.
If you remember, Tom, their investigators, they treated us good. Like the crime lab guy we sat with, he talked about lifting the print.
Yeah.
But it was that their chief or whatever they called, like whoever ran the investigative thing, he didn't want us anywhere. Remember, he took the map off the wall to show us where Coy Graves was?
He wouldn't even take us to the prison.
I know.
I mean, it was like ridiculous.
Was that Broderick?
I don't remember the guy's name. He was like their major. He was in charge.
Yeah, he was in charge of the investigators and stuff like that. There was a police chief, and then there was this guy because he basically told us at the first meeting, we don't want your help and we don't need your help. Anything you want, you tell us, write down, and we'll send it to your chief of detectives. And Chief Maxwell, to this day, will tell you, he's still waiting for the first piece of mail to come from Fort Collins. We never got it. They never did anything. It wasn't at our level that there was a problem. The problem was the upper level.
Yeah, I mean, they never told us that he got called in as a suspect, which really bothered me. They never told us about the letter they received, about him saying, about dogs and cats and things like that, and school, how he left Philadelphia. Like, never told us none of that stuff, which, I thought we were working together. Like I said, I made sure that we shared everything to them. We had everything in our database put on a disk, and we took it out there to them. Every suspect, Linda and Carl will call them every week. Hey, who's off your list? They never once gave us that name on their list. It was even off. We didn't, even when we told them about him, we narrowed him down to say, this has got to be the guy. They never told us they called in as a tip. The people that called in to tip called and complained to me because they weren't getting the reward. Look, I don't know. Crime Commission. I mean, I put your name in. It wasn't me to do it because I went out there and told them there's a reward, but I never knew they called, I mean, I just still don't get it.
Can I circle back to Philly for a minute?
Yeah.
Were you aware of the work that James McGinnis did in Central Detectives investigating? I guess
not till afterwards.
So you didn't realize that fall that he was working on that? No,
I didn't know he had evidence too. I didn't know anything about it. No, I knew he had the case. I did not know what he did with it.
Okay, and you didn't know that he was trying to set up a meeting with folks from sex crimes. Okay.
I know I didn't speak to him. I can tell you that. So.
Well, if we're fortunate, he's supposedly going to participate in one of these, and we can. He began. Well, first of all, he decided fairly quickly that the assault against Bell, the second case, should have been considered a sexual assault, and then he decided fairly quickly that it was linked to at least two of the other cases. I don't know if he had linked it to Abby's case or not, and was trying to set up a meeting with folks from sex crimes, and nobody came to that meeting. And then he was the lieutenant in charge of the Special Investigations Unit in sex crimes, went over and told his sergeant that he didn't have a right to be investigating a sex crime and to shut down his investigation.
Well, I can tell you it wasn't me.
But no, I wasn't asserting that it was you. I know it wasn't you.
It was Calusi.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, Calusi took him to the front.
Went to his captain, which was Tom Quinn at the time, and had him taken to the front. And when all this stuff came out, Maxwell was the chief of internal affairs. When he looked at everything, he goes, they basically forced McGinnis off the job. But when I talked to Chief Maxwell about it, he said he did a really good job. There was no reason to take him to the front. But again, when you're trying to protect your little circle, you're going to keep everybody away, and that's what it was happening. He took
another cop to the front for being involved in the investigation as well, a uniform cop.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you would have said, man, that's a cop. He's aggressive. He's out there doing the work. He's trying to solve crime. He took him to the front, too.
Which means to the disciplinary board.
Yeah.
For those not familiar.
Disciplinary charges up on him. And the best part was it ended up making me the complainant on it because they asked me if I ever gave the guy permission to do it. I said, no, I never even talked to him. Not McGinnis as the uniform cop, but he forced him to be same thing.
The uniform cop on the same case?
He was a uniform cop in one of the districts that was out doing his own investigation, trying to find out who the guy was, who the rapist was.
It was a 6th district guy, I think.
District guy, yes.
Yeah, it was a district guy, 6th district guy.
A patrol officer?
Yeah.
Yes, he was a patrol officer.
And he got busted?
That was back after the detail had started and everybody knew what was going on. So he was out there trying to do things.
Guys, we covered a lot tonight. Ray or anyone else, any final statements to kind of wrap up this episode? Tom, again, thanks for coming on with us. 2 different episodes.
My pleasure.
You've shared a lot here on a very difficult case that we all were involved in, and no one more, of course, than Sil Schieber. Ray, any words to kind of take this part out?
I do. I want to ask Tommy one final question here. Tom, early on, back in 97, you and your partner had an idea that something was astray, and you tried to do something about it, but you got a lot of pushback. However, as things moved on, you were vindicated, and what you and Mike believed from the beginning actually turned out to be true. How did that make you feel? Did that give you was there a mixture of anger and finally, finally it happened?
It's special victims. Special victims is one of them jobs where when you don't do, you always feel like you didn't do enough. And I was angry because if they would have listened at the time, there may not have been any other victims. We might have been able to stop them. It's not saying we could have, but we might have been. And you always feel for the other victims after that. I'm going now 11 years, and there's cases that I'm thinking about, did I do enough on this? Did I do enough on that? The park rapist. I called my unit once a week, say, anything new? Did you try this? Did you try that? When I first got off this, I went on a TV show called Special Victims, Sex Crimes, and Cold Justice Sex Crimes. And they were going out, and we went out to Utah, out that way, to do an investigation. And they first started doing the DNA profiling with the families and doing composites. And I remember calling our unit, hey, listen, we pretty much know who this guy's family is. Are we doing that too? And it's there might not be enough. And then later on, it's advanced and able to do it and track down the guy. So it never leaves your thoughts. This case never leaves my thoughts. I told Mr. Schieber the first time I spoke to him on the phone, it's I never had a chance to speak to him, but my sympathies to him and his family. And, my heart goes out to him. And I just wish that they would have listened to us back then. And maybe this didn't happen, I'm just sorry. I'm angry, but more sorrowful, I would say. It's kind of the way it is with, like I said, especially with sex crimes. You're always thinking, what did I miss that may have stopped this from happening again? It's always in your mind.
That's kind of why we're doing what we're doing. We all feel like you do. Hopefully there's something that we can do here that will change the outcome of things that are yet to come or things that are going on right now. The people listen.
I've been around the country, and I've been to Canada to teach how to handle sex crimes. And it's always what I tell them. It's you can't go into this thinking, how would I react? Because that's not the way it's supposed to be. Every victim reacts differently, and it's their reason, and when they say things, like I said, we learned a lot. And I hope that, of course, with Carol Tracy and all, we went out and we did a lot of training across the country. And with Equitox in Washington, D.C., we did a lot of training across the country in Canada to try to teach people what we learned and the mistakes we made so it doesn't happen again.
Well, we may be calling on you again here as we get moving here to kind of put something together to help other departments kind of learn from the mistakes that were made here and in those other departments around the country, around the world, as a matter of fact. It's not just here. It's a systemic problem.
It is. And it's, you just don't I can tell you luckily for me, my very first time in sex crime, midnight shift, radio disc jockey calls in. She said she was raped on the way to her car off the City Line Avenue. And I get to the hospital and you know what? She's outside laughing and joking with her friends. Me immediately thinking, well, that's not the way a rape victim reacts. Luckily, it was somebody with me who said, no, wait a minute, everybody acts differently. What I didn't know was that she had been sexually assaulted before when she was in college. We found the guy. The guy confessed. He went to jail. She never went on the radio again. So I kind of learned in one of my first ones, that it's not always the way we see it. And the biggest part with you can get out in this show is, juries don't know that. Juries don't know how victims react. They're starting to learn, but, juries don't realize that the victims will go back to their perpetrator. The victims will, not say everything. And automatically they have that same mentality of, she has discrepancy, she's lying, which is not the truth. So that's the biggest things we tried to get out there, that, besides teaching law enforcement, you have to teach the public how victims react so that, otherwise they're not going to believe them. And that's what happens. It's the only crime that has a built-in defense.
You're right. That's a great point, Tom. Tommy, thanks so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
What a wealth of knowledge.
Thank
Tommy,
you.
thank you for coming on.
Absolutely, Tom. Thank you.
Take care.
Hell of a boss. I want you to know that.
Thanks, Chuck. Not better detectives than you and Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your work back then, and thanks to both of you, Chuck and Tom, and thanks for your ongoing work now, including him in this podcast. One more time from the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. If you or someone you know has experienced sexual assault, you are not alone. RAIN's National Sexual Assault Hotline offers free, confidential 24/7 support in English and Spanish. Call 800 or 564673. Chat at hotline.rain.org or text HOPE to 64673. Everyone, please check us out at coldredpodcast.com. Like us, subscribe to us. Again, thanks to Matt Robinson, Matt McLaughlin, and Rick Schilling, our music director. Ray, of course, thanks you for being my colleague on the air. And again, to our guest tonight and everyone out there, we will see you next time, continuing with the Philadelphia Center City Rapist case in New Fort Collins, Colorado, next time on Cold Red.